Hello, hello, everyone. How are you all doing today on this lovely Wednesday? We're always here on a Wednesday, so I always say it like it's like a different day. How you doing, darling?
Hey, everybody. Happy Wednesday. It doesn't feel like Wednesday, but I'm here for it.
Yeah, I don't know what it feels like, but I think it all just feels like a blur. But
Yes.
it is so hot, so I'm not wearing a jacket. I usually wear like a suit jacket. It's only 71 right now, but like 71 at 9 in the morning is pretty hot. It was
It's
so hot
wild.
yesterday. It hit the
It
90s.
is wild.
The 90s. I was just
hmm
like, this is too much. I'm gonna melt and die.
I know my kids are like, it's still winter. The calendar says it's still winter. What is happening?
I know. Something is array out in these streets because it was hot, hot, hot. Well, I'm always excited to see you. I feel like we talk a lot, but we
Yay.
have to get Greek food soon.
Yes.
I miss
Yes.
you.
I know. I miss you too. It's so nice to see you. It was funny. I just looked at the calendar and I was like, oh, this is popping up out of nowhere. I'm so happy to be here
I
today.
know. It feels like our last live stream was like last week.
I know.
So
It really does. It really, really does.
yes. Well, I am so excited to be here. Welcome, everyone. As always, my name is Chris Trondsen. I'm a licensed therapist that specializes in the treatment of obsessive compulsive disorder, body dysmorphic disorder, and those related disorders that many of us have co-occurring with our OCD. I also have OCD and BDD myself. I received treatment. I'm in a good place with it. And I'm excited just to be an advocate, to host these live streams to help advocates flourish. And I just love these live streams. It's community, it's education. It allows us to talk to you, answer your questions, say hi. So, welcome. If you're watching us on Facebook, make sure to like and heart the live stream. Make sure to follow us. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. We're also on LinkedIn, Twitch, and X. So show us some love on those platforms as well. But it's good to see everybody everywhere, wherever you're watching us. But I hate doing this alone. That's why you will always see somebody on the screen with me because I feel weird talking to myself, even though I do feel like the audience is like our third host. I love
Yes.
the audience. They're answering questions, they're asking questions, they're communicating with each other. It would be weird if it was just us with nobody joining us, but we always get a good crowd, and I love that.
Yeah.
But I'm excited about my co-host, Kimberley Quinlan. Introduce yourself, darling.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kimberley Quinlan. I am a marriage and family therapist. I specialize in OCD and OCD related conditions as well. I have a practice in Calabasas, California, with seven therapists who work for me.
Wow.
I also have CBT School, which is where we have online resources for folks who do not have access to therapy. And I have a podcast called Your Anxiety Toolkit. We are now releasing podcasts twice a week. So lots
Whoa.
of exciting things happening over here.
Yeah, and we have a BDD, CBT
Yes.
school together for people with BDD as well as clinicians. I just did a talk for OCD North Carolina and for Natasha Daniels' parent group. And one thing that a lot of people were saying is like, as I was speaking, they're like, "Hey, I came just to kind of learn about it. My loved one has OCD, but it sounds like they have this too." And I tell people that's why it's so important to learn the common co-occurring disorders with OCD, things
Yep.
like social phobia, known as social anxiety, body dysmorphic disorder, a BFRB like skin picking, nail biting, cheek
Mm,
biting, hair
yep.
pulling, hoarding disorder,
Yep.
generalized anxiety disorder, major
Yep.
depressive disorder. And
Health
it's important,
anxiety.
health anxiety, because emetophobia, I think a lot of people don't realize how common these occurrences are: ADHD, autism. And so a lot of times people will think they only have OCD. And when you get in with somebody that specializes, we can kind of tell, like, wait a second, this feels like something else. And so a lot of times when people find out, wait, I have this thing too, sometimes it is hard. I remember getting new diagnosis and being like, stop, leave me alone.
Yeah.
But it explained things. I was like, oh, that's why.
And to be honest, it's rare that I have a client who just has OCD. Like there's very common that's an overlap, and I don't think there's anything to be ashamed of there. Even if your overlap is a coexisting depression, having more than one is very, very common.
Yeah. Absolutely. Before we jump in, it's always a good reminder to let people know, although these live streams are educational and community building, and we really just want to help answer your questions and give you direction. We can't do therapy. We also can't do crisis intervention. So if you're in a really unsafe place, please go ahead and find a provider near you. This is how I found my therapist many years ago. Kimberley Quinlan and myself are both on this directory. You can find a person specializing in OCD treatment. And you can also just go to the website itself and find resources, but we can't be a crisis hotline. So we just want to more so recognize like we're helping you out, we're leading you to resources and community, but we can't do more than that. I love that. What do you call it? I love that Ash said Happy Wednesday OCD community. I love that we're a community. I love it. That's how I like to think about it. So that's beautiful. Just for a little agenda, Kimberly and I are going to chit chat about some OCD stuff while y'all join us. We always have people coming back in. And I'm sorry, Kim, I was like, I just saw your text.
Sorry, guys, I got distracted. My son is going to his orientation for middle school, and I was just sending him a good luck message, and I accidentally sent it to Chris.
It popped up and it said, good luck, you'll do great. And I was like, oh, thanks, Kimberly, you will too. I was so confused.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be distracted. It's just that I wanted to make sure he's literally walking in now, and I'm not with him, so I wanted to be here with you guys.
No, it's all good. It was just funny. I was like, oh, thanks, Kimberly.
I'm just going to message you in the background the whole way. Like, you're doing great, Chris. Keep going. Keep going.
It feels like the meme from what's Kim the Kardashian mom, Kris Jenner, where she's like, "You're doing great, sweetie." Yeah. I was like, "Oh, thanks, Kimberly." No, I want to talk about two different things, and then we'll jump into the questions. I want people to kind of load their questions, but the first one, maybe I didn't come with this topic, but since we talked about it a little bit, let's talk about that, because you were saying that you rarely have clients that solely have OCD, and I agree. I rarely have a client where it's straight OCD, and if it is, it's typically because it's a mild case. Not that any case is better or worse than each other, but people come in and they're thriving in work, they're thriving. Oops, is that me? Yes, I forgot to put it on focus, do not disturb. I'll have people come in and like rarely, unless like I said, it's like a mild case. Maybe somebody is doing well in work and well with their family. Just unfortunately, they're having some thoughts, etc. And then most of people will have those co-occurring disorders. So how do people deal with not starting to feel pathologized or feel shame or feel like all they are diagnoses? Because, I kind of joke, but I'm coming to the realization, like I've been diagnosed with ADHD a lot, and I've always kind of like ducked and dived that diagnosis, because it's never been like, somebody's done testing. It's always been, hey, I think you should get tested. You're showing signs. But I know even for me in my position currently, I'm like, I can't take any more diagnosis. Like I have to be Chris, right? But it is important too. So how do people balance where they don't start to just feel like all they are is a list of diagnosis?
Maybe I have a different response to it, because I don't have a ton of shame or I actually prefer it. I prefer to know. I'm sort of a person where I'm like, doesn't matter. Like I'm so good at just going, this doesn't define me. This is just another way to describe a very similar condition. And that is the truth. Like a lot of these conditions are very much very, very similar, but we have these little nuanced ways. So for me personally, I actually am just like, okay, good. Now I know. And now I can get the treatment. Now, of course, there are some who feel a lot of shame around the condition, or they feel very overwhelmed by it. What I would encourage you to do is, if I'm able as a clinician to diagnose a client with an additional condition, I actually consider that as we are one step closer to solving this person's struggle. Like we're just every day getting closer. So for me, I like to reframe it as this is just us getting one step closer to solutions, treatments, understanding the very nuances of you and what's going on for you so we can treat you. I would much prefer my clients to know what they have so that we can have specialized treatment for their health anxiety and their OCD or in their BDD than for us to be just clumping them all under one condition and being like, let's just throw spaghetti at the wall. So yeah, absolutely no shame. No, I don't want anyone to feel embarrassed. You're supported by a huge community here of us where we, again, rarely do I have someone who just has one condition. So I hope that validates everybody. I think this is just one step closer to you standing on the top of that mountain.
Yeah, no, I like what you're saying, right? And like normalizing it because that's why I
Mhm.
love running support groups. My support groups are at night and it's long days. Like I have a support group from 6 to 8 tonight. So my work day is almost like 11 and a half, 12 hours of jotting notes.
Mm.
But I do it because it is like validating. One of the questions I ask in our introductions when people are introducing each other to each other is what other diagnosis have you been diagnosed with? And it's always like a sense of relief because people will say these others, and I'll see in the chat like, oh, I have that too. Or like when people are sharing, they're like, oh, I feel like I can talk about my, health anxiety or BDD, or, I'm a skin picker. Like I feel like I can talk about it now, knowing other people have other diagnoses. And this isn't strictly just like, we can only talk about OCD. And it's like, no, it doesn't appear in a vacuum. Most people have other things.
Yeah.
I think the nice thing is I know you're like this too, but a lot of us in this space, like we really keep doing trainings to learn those co-occurring conditions so that when we have our clients come in, I think the other part that people feel overwhelmed by is like, well, I'm already using my resources to see you as my OCD provider. If I have this other thing, how am I also going to get help? But I think that's why
Mm.
it's good. Like you just said, a lot of them have a lot of similar attributes, and so many of us clinicians are trained in treating those occurring conditions. So I tell clients like don't be embarrassed or shameful to tell your clinician. They may be able to treat it. A lot of
Right.
times they're the ones that actually can also help you with that, in addition to the OCD.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And yes, there is a resource. It is difficult on your resources, maybe, but I think that's even more of a reason to get a really skilled clinician who can help or use communities like, the BDD community, or there is an eating disorder community if that's what you're struggling with. I always sort of love when clients come in and you ask them, like, what are your diagnoses? And they always sort of chuckle and say, like, oh, it's like an alphabet soup. Like, which acronym don't I have? And I love when people can just embrace that with a place of compassion and a little bit of humor. Like we have to sort of laugh at, I too have an array of alphabet assigned to my name. But again, I really want to stress it does not define you. I don't want you to feel like, again, I just see them under an umbrella. Like it's all under one umbrella and so forth. So yeah, just talked with your clinician about them. Ask them what are the differences? How might we modify treatment to sort of accommodate these different conditions that I'm experiencing?
Yeah. I have a couple more chit chat before we jump into questions. If you're watching us now, whatever platform you're on, make sure to get your questions in the chat so you can answer them in the order we get them. I already see some coming in. I wanted to ask second question. I know that you have released a recent CBT school around like rumination and overthinking. Why do you think one of the things that I've been seeing in with because I do a higher level of care. And one thing I always talk to the clients that I get referred is like, what are some of the things that have worked and haven't worked? And I have noticed that some clients, their clinician has done great ERP, a lot of behavioral work, but they've never addressed kind of those like mental compulsions, the rumination, the overthinking, the consistent state of worrying.
Mhm.
And I've tried to explain to people that I work with, like, hey, I'm so happy you didn't loop back around the block after you felt you hit someone.
Mhm.
But it sounds like then 6 hours after not doing that compulsion, you were still thinking about it. That's 6 hours of
Yeah.
mental rumination, compulsing, overthinking. That is it, that's what we have to address too, but they
Yeah.
never recognize that as a compulsion. Why did you come up with that school? And why do you think it's so important that people with OCD are
Mhm.
recognizing what's also going on in their heads in addition to those physical
Yeah.
compulsions?
Yeah. You know what never really crossed my mind? That you serve a higher level of care, and I'm actually serving more a lower level of care, meaning people who aren't in therapy or are just doing once a week. So I didn't ever think about the fact that we're doing that differently. Um, the the one thing I actually, to be honest with you, I was in this women's like business weekend, and this woman came up and she was like, "What is the one thing that your community needs help with?" And it was this like grand, like whatever talk. And immediately I was like, across the board, no matter where you are under that umbrella, no matter what condition you have, we all struggle with rumination in those categories: depression, generalized anxiety, OCD, BDD, health anxiety. They're all under, we all have to manage the rumination piece of it. So that was like, oh, that's so easy when you put it that way. It is literally that. And so that was why I created it, of just like, okay, I could create every course under the sun for every condition, but the one thing that people all struggle with is rumination, myself included. The beauty of it is when you master rumination and mental compulsions, you can apply that skill in any of those conditions or any life situation, because we all ruminate in our life in different areas. And so this is just a one skill thing that you could really just target. And I would say the majority of my face-to-face clients struggle, of all the different types of compulsion, in which I consider there to be 5. Rumination is usually the one that takes up the most time, and it's one that you're doing all day in your head. So it's rumination is something that can be so beneficial if you can just even peel back 50% of what you're doing.
Yeah. Can you talk about what rumination is? I mean, I think we know and stuff, but people that like, I think, the going back to what you're saying about the higher level of care, one thing I like about doing a higher level of care is often I get to see like what works, because clients will come in and say, hey, this really worked for me. I just need to
Mhm,
do it more consistently or with
mhm.
more oversight. But I also learn the things that it is missing, right? And I'm not saying that
Yeah,
from a place of judgment, but I think the biggest thing people don't realize is the rumination piece, because they're like, I
yep,
don't understand it, Chris. Like, I don't do any physical compulsions anymore. And I'm like,
mhm,
okay, tell me what your brain is doing throughout the day. And they're like, it's
yep,
worrying about the garage being closed, or I'm thinking, did I hit somebody with my car? Or is God mad at me? Right. I'm like, oh, okay.
yep.
That didn't get addressed. Yeah.
Yeah. So the first step of understanding or treating rumination is doing an inventory of how it's happening in your life. And it is different for every person. And so it's really identifying what, well, generally speaking, rumination is any mental act that you do about something that may or may not happen in the future. So if we were right here in this present moment, if you're putting your attention, your brain, on anything that may or may not happen in the future, or that may or may not have happened in the past, you are ruminating. Now, that doesn't mean that if you're just going, oh, I loved that birthday party this weekend, it was such a great weekend. That's not rumination, right? Rumination, the difference here is you're spinning your wheels on things that are catastrophic, that are things that are really unrealistic. And there's a strong sense of urgency to solve that thing. Now, the other piece of rumination is sometimes we are just ruminating to avoid. Rumination is actually an avoidant. Like, if I can just think through this, well, then I'll somehow figure out, what my fear is, or whether that may or may not come true. And we ruminate. Sometimes we do this like on our phone too. We might just like doom scroll as a way to avoid what really needs to get done. So rumination is any mental act that you're doing repetitively. It usually causes a degree of distress. It usually takes you away from the things that you love to do or that you need to do. And usually you are focusing on something that is unsolvable, which is why you have to keep doing it, right? So usually I say to clients, if it was solvable, you would have solved it by now. The fact that you're still spinning on it means that it's probably just something you have to accept is uncertain.
Yeah, the way I like to think about rumination is like one of my common ones. I had moral scrupulosity, and so it would be like a big one. I remember it like with in high school was a big one that hit me
Mhm.
hard. And I remember like for instance, like I'd go to a party and I'd hang out with my friends or whatever on like a Friday or Saturday night, and I didn't like say goodbye to someone. They didn't say goodbye to me, and I felt kind of like weird energy. And I would go home, and I wouldn't like call them or message them over the weekend. So maybe my therapist would have been like, "Oh, good job." But what was happening is the whole weekend I was like
Mhm.
ruminating. I was replaying the event. Did I say something? Did something come up? Do they not like me anymore? Etc. Now, I did have physical compulsions too. I had this thing where like Mondays were so stressful for me in high school because everybody I didn't say goodbye to and have like a good feeling and vibe with at the end of the night. I would like go up to them at school on Monday and be like, "Hey, it was so good to see you at that party this weekend." And they'd be like, "Yeah, it's such a good time." I'm like, "Yeah, it was cool, right? Yeah, okay, good." Shoo, I almost had like a
Yeah.
mental checklist that I'd do that,
Mhm.
but that was like a 10-second compulsion, but I would spend hours in my head. Are they mad? Do they still like me? Are they going to be my friend on Monday? And so I think for all the people watching, what Kimberly and I are trying to say is like, yes, it is very important to address those things that you either avoid or physically do. But if you're noticing yourself going throughout the day and kind of getting in your head and overthinking, please address this. This is a good question on the
Yeah.
topic, but yes, are all mental compulsions considered rumination?
I would actually flip that is I just consider number one, I consider them one and the same, but rumination is a form of a mental compulsion. A mental compulsion is a mental act that you do to reduce or remove uncertainty or discomfort. One, we could do mental counting. You could do mental catastrophization. Rumination is another one. You could do mental praying. There are so many types of mental compulsions, and rumination is just a very generic term for like well, technically, rumination is the term for cows' digestive systems, and that they eat something and then they kind of like throw it up into their second stomach and then sort of chew it up again and go back, it swallows it again. So you can sort of imagine that's gross, I know, but that's where we get the term rumination is it's something that you've already chewed on that you swallow again, and then it's sort of like this back and forth nonstop process.
Yeah, there's actually a rumination disorder in the DSM, but it's with kids with food, that kids that
Yes.
eat food, chew it up,
Yes.
spit it out, chew it up. What I like to think about, Betsy, is like rumination is where if you take the word like replay, right? Almost like think about you're like replaying a situation, you're trying to make sense of it, you're trying to get
Mhm.
certainty out of it. But like Ash said in the comments, there's other mental compulsions. There's mental counting, there's mental checking. The big one that I have clients that do a lot is one of my clients calls it offsetting, but it's where, he'll have a bad thought and then he has to have a good thought to
Yeah.
replace the bad thought.
Mental
Yeah,
neutralization.
we call it neutralization. He calls it offsetting, but it's that idea. But think about what I like to think about, Betsy, with rumination is like you're driving home and you're on a 45-minute drive, commute back home. And for 45 minutes, all you're doing is replaying that incident, right? Did I hit
Mhm.
somebody with my car? You're replaying the driving around the block. You're kind of like thinking like, okay, did it happen? Like you're just replaying that over and over. And
Yeah.
sometimes like I noticed with my rumination, it may not even be that like overt. Sometimes it's where I just was like in a perpetual state of like, did I hit someone? Did I hit someone? Well,
Mm.
that wasn't really my OCD, but whatever my OCD was at that time, right? Like, did I anger someone? Did I steal something or whatever it was? So just kind of that like stuck in the moment.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Just think of it the way that I explain it to clients is there are physical compulsions we do. We might hand wash, we might jump a crack, we might check, we might ask for reassurance, like we might Google. They're physical ways of getting relief from the obsession. Mental compulsions and rumination is any mental act we do to get relief or certainty from the obsession we have. And I will say, so often clients forget this, is it is as important that you treat that as any physical compulsion. Like you really have to understand, like we want to work on both. That's the best insurance policy on your treatment, is to make sure that you are also addressing those mental compulsions. I believe it's a little harder to catch and a little harder to peel back on, but totally tolerable, doable. It's a doable, tolerable act.
Yeah, the two things I like to tell clients is like recognize when that O becomes a C. So an O becomes that
Yeah.
compulsive rumination. So if I left the house and my brain says, "Hey, Chris, you may have left the iron on," if I say it could happen and then go back to listening to music, I'm good, right? But if I go,
Mhm.
oh, you're right. What if I left it on? Okay, did I?
Mhm.
Okay, think. Well, here, I'll use a real example to my OCD. Like a lot of times, like I would wash my hair and then I'd start to wash my body and OCD go, but did you shampoo? Did you shampoo
Mhm.
at all? And instead of just saying, well, I guess I might have not, I'm going to wash my body and get out of the shower, what I would do is I'd say, oh my God, I don't remember washing my hair.
Mhm.
Oh, shoot. okay, did I? And then I try to replay. Oh, wait, was that from today or was that yesterday's shower? Oh my God, I
Yeah.
can't remember. Okay, I'm going to be safe. And then it became physical and re-shampoo my
Yeah.
hair. But that whole back and forth while I was washing my body, like, did I shampoo my hair? That is the rumination. And the hard thing about rumination is you could do it anywhere. You could be at line
Mhm.
at the grocery store, in class, at work, whereas physical compulsion, sometimes you're forced to hold off.
Yeah.
And that's why rumination could be so deadly. But also the way you're ruminating is if OCD is having a monologue in your head and you turn it into a dialogue and back and forth, that's when it becomes a problem.
Yeah, I'm actually going to just look up real quick because I did a podcast on the difference between an obsession and a compulsion. If I can find which episode that was, it might be helpful for people to figure that, to help them sort of
Yeah, put
navigate the
it
difference.
send it to me in the back end chat and then I'll put it in the public chat.
Yeah, it's episode 180. I don't have the public chat, so I'm just going to text it to you, Chris.
Okay, perfect.
Paste.
Yeah, Ash, OCD rumination, artistic rumination. One thing that I've always, because I have a nephew and a cousin with autism, and I've worked with a lot of clients with autism. I actually really like working with clients with autism because they're usually the best at treatment. They're really great. But the way that we always find the difference is like typically with OCD rumination, it's not fun. It's not pleasurable. It's very
Mhm.
panicked. It's very haphazard. It's very like it's urgent. I gotta solve this. This is dangerous, etc. Like it's very uncomfortable. Whereas typically when people are like daydreaming or autistic rumination or kind of tuned out of something, or like my clients with ADHD, like they're kind of like thinking about pleasurable things. That's usually how I help with the difference. So like for my nephew, a big thing I used to help with is with their people working with him is like helping them, like his occupational therapist, like because he has OCD, like what is OCD and what is autism. And that's why it's important to work with people that know the difference, because sometimes good intended providers will treat certain autistic behaviors as OCD, like sensory like tags, right, on the back of a shirt or something, and be like, all right, we're going to expose you to tags, but that's a sensory component and not a component of OCD. All right, let's jump into questions. We got lots of questions popping up. Ash asks again, for Chris and Kim, how do you both handle OCD spikes when life just keeps repeatedly throwing stressors your way? So tired of back-to-back stress, and OCD is not my friend right now in this.
I know, I was just reading that, Ash. Do you want to go first with that, Chris, or do you want me to go?
Why don't you go? Because I'm going to put the podcast in the chat.
I mean, I have a policy where I'm always preparing for spikes, whether I'm stressed or not. So, my biggest advice is a really good treatment plan involves always being prepared and willing for those spikes to happen. I think when we're like in a mindset of like, oh no, I hope they don't come, we tend to get blindsided by them a little more, and they tend to knock us down and make us feel not so like demoralizing they can be. So ideally, when time is stressful, I often have clients like write OCD a letter and be like, you're totally welcome to come. You're totally welcome to help me with this day. You're going to talk and say whatever you want to say, but I'm not going to give you my attention because these are the things that are important to me. Like I sometimes just writing that out or saying it out loud can be very empowering for them. The other piece is if there is a stressful time and you're having a lot of OCD spikes, I would be more, aggressive and just increase your exposures during that time. So let's say you're having more intrusive thoughts about a certain topic. I would say, okay, I'm gonna get ahead of this. Let me beat OCD to the into the game here, and I'm gonna come up with whatever I think OCD could come up with, and maybe add a little few sprinkles on top, so that OCD doesn't take this from me. That mindset shift can be so powerful. Now, I know when you're stressed, your first thought is like, I don't want that. I don't want to have to do more exposures. I'm already stressed. I'm already burnt out. And I get it. I mean, anytime during the stressful times, if you can ask for help, whether that be help with cleaning, help with whatever it is that you're doing, moral support, get that so that you have the capacity to sort of be a little more aggressive with your OCD exposures. That would be my main piece of advice.
Yeah, I think the three things that come to mind, and you just said one of my points, so I'll say the other two first.
Mhm.
I would say that one of the main points is what I had this whole discussion with my group about this. Typically, what happens when OCD is hitting us back to back, because when you said like keeps throwing stressors, sometimes those stressors will be OCD based, sometimes they'll be life based, right? And I think what happens a lot of times is our life based stressors get neglected, maybe projects at work, assignments for school, reconnecting with a friend that you had a falling out with. The person you're with is like upset that you're not spending as much romantic time with them, right? And I think those things get neglected. So one of the things that I advise all my clients to do is you've got to carve out time to handle non-OCD life stressors so that they don't pile up and you get to a point where it's like, my house is messy and I have people coming over and now I have to race and clean and I should have done this earlier, right? So it's like, I know OCD kind of demands front and center stage, but part of the treatment is neglecting OCD's wants and desires and focusing on
Mhm.
other things. So really prioritizing these other stressors. Number two is there has to be a level of self-care. And I know that word self-care feels so ominous, but really just find what is your thing or things that relax you. I know for me, it's like I'm learning Spanish. I have this app I'm using. I also really like to read, and then I like texting and connecting with friends. So if I'm not doing that throughout the week, my stress levels are higher, plus hitting the gym, right? So if you can kind of carve in a consistent schedule in that self-care so it's happening, that is kind of poking holes in the bucket so it can never overflow. And that's going to include things like making sure to get proper sleep and getting some kind of movement and connection. And then I would say finally exactly what Kim said is if we sit there and wait for OCD to punch us first, we're always in defense mode and we're always kind of like having to do things when we least want it and when we least expect it. So if you are structuring in exposures that are values based and part of your everyday life anyways, then you're sort of throwing the first punch. And then what happens is when OCD hits back, you're already sort of in that mindset and that grind of fighting OCD. So then it doesn't feel as overwhelming.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I was listening to this podcast yesterday and they were talking about like life admin and that we tend to ignore life admin. And she said something that hit me so deeply is she said, you have no actual understanding of how much that box in the corner of Amazon returns that just sits there, that's taking up so much mental space. And I was thinking, not really, it's just in the corner, but it's right. Every time I go in there and I'm avoiding daily admin things, it is adding stress to my life. So I think you're one. I think you made a really good point. Is highly as people with these mental conditions, highly prioritize just a daily schedule where things run as smoothly as you can.
I love that. Yeah, it makes all the difference. And I was telling clients last night because somebody who has ADHD and he was saying how hard it was and those things pile up like the boxes at Amazon and stuff. And I said the best thing that I do is like the second I think about it, I just do it.
Yeah.
Like I'll be like, oh, I have to get back to Kimberly on something, and it's like the second I have a break, I'm like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
send it now because if I say I'll do it later, it won't happen. So I think it's doing it
Yeah.
in the
They
moment.
say eat the frog. Eat the frog first or something.
I
Gross.
think that sounds disgusting, so I won't be using that one.
But that's what they say, like, you do the thing that scares you first because then
Yeah.
you have relief.
What I always say, it's actually from my mom. She used to tell me like your dad and you like to eat dessert first, and then you have this heavy thing late at night that you avoid, and it just keeps getting pushed down. So she's like,
Yeah,
so I always think of like eat dinner and then dessert, right?
yeah.
Like an example is like clients will have things they need to do, so they'll go on the couch and relax and watch TV, but you're not really relaxing. The whole time you're watching the show, you're thinking,
Yeah,
I'm avoiding. I should be doing this. I should be
yeah.
doing this. So
It's
if you
not
do
relaxing.
dinner first, then when you go to do dessert, like relax on it and watch, something you enjoy, now you get to actually
Mhm.
enjoy it.
I agree. I'm a one for that as well.
Yeah. I love this question because of the second half. And I'll answer the second half and maybe you can answer the first half first. COVID gave me OCD fear of germs as an adult. ERP doesn't seem to work. Also, it seems like therapists don't know how to treat a woman in her 50s. The reason I want to say something on the second, and then you could jump in, is I agree. I think one of the things that I think it's great that the foundation and a lot of clinicians and a lot of trainings are doing is trying to catch OCD early and making sure
Mhm.
that we get kids into treatment and that families know how to support. But I do agree with you because I think there's a whole other struggle for people that either didn't know they had OCD until later in life, or they're later in life and getting treatment. And the reason that that's important is because the needs and the specific you know, unique challenges of somebody who's in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, because a lot of times people have families, they have a job, they're trying to navigate treatment and navigate that. Also, there's a lot of years of habits that you have to now break. And then also, when you've been living with OCD for so long, it becomes less of a disorder and it almost feels like part of you. And there has to be a lot of separation. So I know at the IOCDF, there is a advocate named Valerie Andrews, and she does a lot of advocacy. And I'm going to look up the exact name of the special interest group, but she has a special interest group for, I think she calls it Vintage Voices. I'm going to look it up right now. I love her. But she has, let's see, it is called the yeah, Vintage OCD Voices. So it's a unique space for people who are 50 and older. So I'll put that
Yeah,
in
great
the chat, because
resource.
I think, you know, Valerie's talked about it a lot. She's like, I feel like there isn't a lot of resources for people
Mhm.
at different stages in their life. And I think that's
Yeah. And I would also add there's a lot of new research about the impact of hormones and the onset of mental health conditions. I think that, we're discussing main topics that show up for women in their 40s, 50s, 60s. I would strongly encourage any client of mine in that age to go and speak with their doctor about getting their hormones tested. I do know for me personally, not to give personal information, but I am very young, going through perimenopause very, very early. And I do believe that was also a component of why I kind of got hit with OCD so hard several years ago. And so I would strongly encourage you to speak with your doctor and have your therapist communicate with the doctor about whether hormones are playing a component here, because it does make it hard. It does create a lot of anxiety, and the hormone changes can impact that as well. Um, so and the other thing is, as we age, there's a lot of grief, there is a lot of sort of, having to adapt to so much identity change. I would often encourage a strong emphasis on ACT as a part of your recovery, not just ERP. I would not lead with just ERP for someone that you've explained. And so I wonder if that would be a helpful modality to look into.
Yeah, I also what I always tell people is the way, because there are going to be some people where there's just something about ERP that doesn't connect. So the kind of checklist I always ask people is like, first and foremost, are you working with someone that's a really leader in the field in your area, right? Like, are you working with somebody that has been really well trained in ERP and OCD treatment? And are you taking adjunctive medication if that's needed? Like, has your clinician said, hey, I think medication would be helpful for you? Then my next question usually is, and then are you getting the additional support you need, like a support group? Also, are you at the right level of care? Because, working in a higher level of care, I'll have clients that didn't make a lot of progress in ERP and they did it for a year, 2 years, etc. But there's someone who can barely leave their house, they can't work, they can't function. I'm like, that is really hard to treat once a week, right? Like, that is
Mhm.
definitely something where somebody needs more consistent care. And then, have you tried those adjunctive treatments like acceptance and commitment therapy, cognitive therapy, is some cognitive work, etc. And then we have second line treatments, both on the treatment side and the medication side. So then it's like, okay, if those haven't worked, have you tried those, right? But I also always ask clients, like, what do you, when you say ERP doesn't work, what does that mean for you? Because it is a challenge, right? Like, it is not an easy thing. It is taking yourself back into those value-based experiences that bring on anxiety and really dropping those safety behaviors and feeling like you're kind of hitting something head on, right? But like I said, some people need more motivational interviewing to reconnect with why they're in treatment in the first place. We have cognitive therapies if somebody finds that, hey, I need a little bit more treatment on the cognitive side. I mean, there's other things that you can do. But yeah, I really, really hope that you find the care that you need. But I would say acceptance and commitment therapy may help. Also, I think too, you don't want to get reassurance, but assurance is sometimes helpful. I think people don't have a good grasp because the last time we talked about germs is like in third grade science class. But sometimes what I'll do with a client is just ask them, like, what are their beliefs around germs? And then on my own, not have them do it, but on my own, I'll look up their belief system. And I find that it's just so disconnected with how germs really affect people. And so it's a little bit of education on that because sometimes clients think like, all germs will kill me. And there's a lot of what I didn't know is there's a lot of germs that are really good for you. And in fact, if you don't have those germs, you get sick. So I think we don't know some stuff. So sometimes OCD also picks on things we just don't know.
Yeah. Chris, somebody said, actually, I just want to make sure I address this here. Is someone said, I've got to go back up, they said that eat the frog actually became their compulsion and that they started always doing the hard thing and never allowing themselves pleasure. That's actually way more common than you would even think. I cannot tell you how many people with OCD I know who really, really withhold pleasure as a form of punishment, that they feel like they have to always do the hard thing. So when I say eat the frog first, in no way am I saying that. Of course, OCD always find a way to target anything. We're just talking about like leaning into the discomfort if you're someone who tends to avoid. But if you're someone who's always leaning into discomfort as a compulsion, well, then your exposure would be to do pleasurable things. It goes both ways. So I just wanted to make sure I addressed that.
Yeah, I had started that question because what I was going to say too is like there's a balance. What I see a lot of times with clients is that they're very good in treatment and they're kicking butt and taking names. But then now that they're better, they're still like, okay, I have to do exposure. I have to do, and I'm like, whoa, slow
Mhm.
down. Let's find that
Yeah.
balance, right? So same with this is like, it's not necessarily a bad thing that you're doing the harder thing first. But if it then becomes compulsive, pull back a little bit, right? Find that 80% maybe instead of
Mm.
100%. Elizabeth said that her flare up at 49, her therapist said going through perimenopause, she wasn't diagnosed till 49. Yeah, dude, that there's two things that always fascinate me, and I hope research keeps studying. Is one is obviously the brain, but the second is definitely hormones because a lot of clients going through perimenopause, menopause, we know that there's perinatal OCD. So as people are going through the pregnancy process, but also when you look at the common times that people show OCD symptoms, it's all around puberty, right? Like as puberty kind of starts, people get OCD, and as puberty ends, people get high OCD. It's that drastic change in hormones that often do
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
I was gonna do this. There's two parts to the question. So this first part is finding it hard to sleep at night. So I know a lot of people with OCD find it difficult to sleep at night. What I think a lot of people do is I kind of call it like figuratively hold their breath all day and they don't want to face OCD. And then they're like laying in bed, it's quiet, you're just stuck in your bed, and then boom, all the thoughts start to come up that you've kind of been avoiding. So what usually helps for clients is to address the things that you've been kind of avoiding. I like to tell clients, find that like nighttime cutoff spot. Like if you go to bed at 11:30, maybe like 10 o'clock for you or something, you don't want to be doing exposures right before bed. Find that kind of cutoff spot, but make sure you're addressing whether it's with narrative scripts, whether it's with behavioral, exposures, whether it's challenging, and not ruminating. But you got to face those things because typically what happens is if you face it and you feel like, okay, I've done my work, I'm good, you relax some, you get into bed, it's better. I know for me, kind of like a little hack, I had a lot of hard time sleeping. And even if I did like address my OCD, it was quieter, but I had a hard time sleeping. But what really helped me is a sound machine. I would play like
Mm.
it was a sound of like a lake, like a stream. And I would put it loud enough where it was loud enough to drown out my thoughts, but not too loud to keep me awake. And that was just sort of like a hack. And then when my OCD
Yeah.
got better, I didn't really need it, but I still sleep to it because it's the most calming thing ever. But that really helped me is just like facing and addressing those OCD thoughts and then lying down, doing a relaxing activity before bed,
Yeah.
meditation, relaxing, reading books, and then listening to the sound machine. And then that helped me fall asleep.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people have, if you've spent the whole day ruminating and then you go to bed, you turn the lights off, you're in bed, you haven't built a lot of that muscle like muscle memory of how to reduce those. So it's easy to just start spinning, right? You haven't even got visual things to look at now. And so similar to what Chris said, I've had a couple clients say it was really beneficial to put on a very gentle music, but they said, because I don't trust my brain to not be ruminating until 2 a.m, they just listen to one component of the music. So it's like if you want to just listen for the chime, or you want to listen to the little beat of the drum or the piano, and you're doing everything you can to just train your brain to put attention to one component of that. Now, that's not distraction. That's actually really good attention control, and something we should practice all day as much as we can as well. But the nighttime can be a great time if you need a sleep machine to sort of have that to help give you something as a focal point instead of focusing on the obsession.
Yeah, or I visualize, like, I imagine
Mm.
myself, like, in a cabin that, like, borders the stream, having kind of like a hammock-like seat, like, having a blanket
Aw.
over me, having, like it's funny because even though it's always cold in this visualization, I still gotta have my iced drinks. I cannot drink hot coffee, I can't have hot tea, I hate hot drinks. When I was in
Yeah.
the UK, it was, like, raining, and I'm like, "Can I get an iced green tea?" And they're like, "We only have hot." I'm like, "Pour it over ice, baby." But I'm, like,
And
sipping
go ahead, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, I visualize, like, me just laying in, like, a hammock, having
Yeah.
a blanket over me, like, reading a book, sipping, like, a nice matcha, kind of, like, going back to sleep, and I'm telling you, dude, it works, and it helps me fall
Mhm.
asleep, and then over
Yeah.
time, like, I'm able to fall asleep right away.
Yeah, and I've probably told this a million times, but I'm always known that I plan my 90th birthday. Like, what am I gonna do on my 90th birthday? I'm gonna have, like, a fiesta party, we're gonna have, like, a bingo night, like, what are we gonna do? And so that's always what I put my attention on if I know I'm going to be ruminating, if I know I'm going to be just spinning on something or churning on how angry I am and so forth.
Yeah. I wanna get into a question, but somebody asked, for the link to your rumination class, so if you text me, I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, sorry, I was trying to post it before, but it wouldn't let me log in. So I will message you, Chris. So just so you guys know, it's called the Rumination Reset. So I just sent you, let me just make sure it's the correct link, Chris. Yep, that's it.
All right. Perfect. I'll put in the chat in a second. I have moral scrupulosity and not doing compulsions leads to deep hopelessness and powerless. Is it like the tools I have used to navigate the world are gone? Advice, should I be trying to build new tools? Okay, I'll jump in first just because I have moral scrupulosity. Here's the thing about moral scrupulosity is it's really good at kind of mimicking our value system, right? And so with moral scrupulosity, like I like to be a moral person. I always joke, I really like to follow rules as long as the rules aren't stupid. If they're stupid rules, I'm not following them. But I like to follow, rules. I feel very guilty if I hurt. I always say that I'm like, oh, this rule's dumb. I'm not following it. If it's like a good rule, like I'm going to follow it, right? I'm not the kind of person that's like weaving in and out of traffic or running lights or something crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think as a value, I don't want to hurt people's feeling. I want to be good. I don't want to steal or lie or cheat to get myself any place, etc. But sometimes OCD can take something that is helpful and just take it to an extreme. And that's
Mhm,
what
mhm.
OCD does with moral scrupulosity. It's where we then turn internal and we start criticizing and judging every single aspect about our behavior. Is that moral? That's a bad thing. If people knew you were doing that, they'd think you're a bad person. Why'd you have that thought? I can't believe you laughed at that joke, right? You need to apologize all the time. So anytime we give up our compulsions, we're going to feel irresponsible. We're going to feel like powerless. We're going to initially feel like I've lost my sense of control. But if you kind of zoom out and recognize you were never in control in the first place, you're kind of like a slave to what OCD is asking you to do. So really working on, hey, I'm actually powered by letting go of this, like, but now my apologies are going to actually mean something, right? Like saying I'm sorry all the time, people tune it out, or people know the difference between you genuinely feel bad or you're just doing something compulsive so you don't feel anxiety. So for me, I started saying, wow, all this like fake moral stuff that OCD has me do isn't even really helping me. It's simply just making me feel less anxious, but it's not like doing anything for other people. And I felt empowered to be able to say yes and no. I think additionally is as you get better better you start to build who you really are, and you learn who you are outside of the OCD. And that's going to be not necessarily maybe new tools, but that's going to be kind of like the new you that doesn't rely on OCD to help navigate. You're going to find your own sort of set of values, whether it's through your faith, whether it's through your family values, whether it's just through kind of like general societal norms, but you'll build that on your own, doing things that you care about versus doing the things that OCD tells you, because you will feel a little bit reckless if you step aside from OCD. And at first, not doing a compulsion, you'll feel a little bit down, but that won't be permanent.
Yeah. I will add to this is Sharla Nicely, who is an OCD advocate, actually has written some really great articles on this just to bring it up. And she actually came on Your Anxiety Toolkit podcast about it. Is she conceptualized this idea of depression as a compulsion. And what she means by this is sometimes when we have a obsession and we don't engage in let's say your regular praying compulsion or checking compulsion or whatever, when you're stuck just tolerating a feeling, like for moral scrupulosity, it's probably like you've done something wrong. We, instead of tolerating the uncertainty that maybe I did or maybe I didn't, we swing the other way to going, yeah, I did do something wrong. You're a terrible person. How could you, like, we swing to this like all or nothing instead of being like, oh my gosh, I hope not. We swing to like, you're the worst. And so it's catching that as a part of your response prevention and not engaging in really black and white thinking. Sometimes that is that black and white. I always say it's like stirring a pot of negativity of like, you're the worst and you're so bad and bad things are going to happen. And, you know, your future sucks. Like, so your job is actually to stay out of that and come back into the uncertainty, because that's the exposure. That is the response prevention. So we don't want to be doing compulsions to reduce uncertainty, but we also don't want to fall into this negative black and white thinking to not have uncertainty as well.
Yeah. And also, in addition to I think punishment a lot of times is a compulsion. Like,
Yep.
I don't even deserve to go to that
Yep.
you know, to that concert because I've been a bad person. I'm morally corrupt, etc. And that becomes compulsive as well.
Yep.
Elizabeth says, which is a common subtype that always doesn't get talked about because a lot of our OCD is about the future. But Elizabeth says, mine is, what if I did something wrong in the past? I'll replay that event until I get a clicking feeling that it didn't happen, whatever the, you know, what if is. I learned not to try to get that clicking feeling because it can take me an hour or more to do in the past. No fun at all. I've learned not to do it or making the event happen in my mind so I can get the feeling it didn't happen. Yeah, the reason I wanted to bring this up is a lot of times people say, I don't really think I have OCD because everybody says it's about like fear of the future. But no, OCD can absolutely have you replay in the past. But the reason I love this comment is because I always tell clients, it's like, you know, people without OCD get that automatic click. We're desperate to create the click. And we think getting the click is just replaying over and over and over. Did I do the event and replay event? And I'll eventually get a click. The opposite happens. The more you kind of bring up a thought and check mentally about that event, the more your brain is saying, ooh, I can't really trust anything because he keeps bringing it up over and over. So maybe I have to like sit back and wait to see, instead of saying, well, I don't know if I did that thing in the past, I'm going to move forward. That creates the click. So that's why OCD treatment's a little tough to conceptualize because it's doing the opposite of what feels natural.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a client who said, it's like I'm almost finishing the jigsaw puzzle, but there's one piece missing and I can't move on until I can push that one jigsaw piece in. But she's like, I'll never get it. Like, I'll never be able to find it. So I'm just sitting here trying to do it. So an amazing work, Elizabeth. It sounds like you've put in some amazing work and it's benefiting you. So happy for you.
Yeah. I have had maladaptive daydreaming since birth and got OCD at 15. It's making mindfulness and being present and consequently ERP very difficult for me. How to manage that for successful ERP. I'm going to find a chat or an article, and I know that Kevin Foss did an episode on this on his podcast, but for people watching that aren't sure of what maladaptive daydreaming is, daydreaming can be fun, especially if you're in a boring class and you're kind of like, you know, or you have prom tonight and you're kind of thinking about how prom's going to be. But the word maladaptive means that this behavior is actually negative and it's creating sort of like the opposite desire of your outcome, right? And so when daydreaming becomes maladaptive, it's where people are almost not even living in their current reality. They're consistently in this daydreaming state. I see it with clients with OCD, and I also see it with clients with ADHD a lot. sometimes with trauma as well. And it's sort of almost like an escape. I've also noticed I haven't read this anywhere because I was trying to see if there was any studies on this, but I've also noticed that my clients that seem to be more severe and have less stimuli in their real life are more likely to do this. So what I mean by this is a lot of my clients that are kind of housebound at home a lot are the ones that seem to do maladaptive daydreaming more because maybe there isn't these things going on in their life to really focus on. So they've kind of created this fantasy world. And people with OCD and ADHD and stuff love this because it brings on kind of like that dopamine because you can fantasize about flying or driving a car, all these kind of things. I will say, trying to do mindfulness on yourself with yourself may not be helpful. I don't know if you have a clinician, but really trying to focus on mindfulness and presence and grounding work with your clinician and having that practice. Additionally, I always like to say, hey, if you're maladaptive daydreaming right here, what happened here? Because trying to stop it when you're in it is always hard. So a lot of times clients will say, oh, it's when I'm laying down in bed and listening to music, or, I'm kind of like in my car in the parking lot at a grocery store and I'm like lean my seat back and I kind of start to like think. So what is coming up before that? What seems to be happening prior to that?
No, I agree. Just think of maladaptive dreaming as just unhelpful daydreaming. So it's just getting in the way of you living your life. And I agree. A lot of times with clients when they have this, we do a lot of logging. We try to like really keep an awareness of when they feel they're going into it. So it's a lot of awareness training, as it is with mental compulsions too, or any compulsion. Is that I know you said it's making mindfulness and being present difficult, and of course it is. And so but the solution is slowing it down. This is true for anything. Like often when someone is saying they're doing automatic hair pulling, automatic skin picking, or they're automatic binge eating, we do a lot of logging to become more aware and more mindful and present of when these behaviors. And we, as Chris said, we can do these behavioral chains of what has happened. What are the things that lead up to this regularly so that we can start to really plan in those situations so that we can hopefully catch it before it happens.
Yeah. I want to throw in one more question because I like this one. I've been improving, but I want to get better. It's like the thoughts keep popping up in my head, and if I don't do the compulsions, it causes stress. So one thing that I think has always been helpful is like if I have a CPAP machine for my sleep apnea, and I loved that like my doctor was like, hey, put Vaseline here because it will get dry. It's going to be uncomfortable the first couple weeks. Use it. Like I got the real, right? Like there was no like fantasy. It's like, hey, it's going to be great, but this is the sucky part. Be prepared for it. Because then I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. I'm like, well, she already told me. And I think that people are used to kind of getting like automatic reward, right? I could order something on Amazon and get it in 2 hours. I can order something on an app and pick it up, right? I think the tough part about OCD treatment is when you make that bold decision not to give into the compulsions. I think we want like a general reward right away for it because that's what we're expecting. And it's like, no, you get hit with those feelings of irresponsibility I was talking about. You feel that stress. I like to think it like turbulence on a plane. It's going to be a little bit of a bumpy ride, but that is not going to be for infinity. If you can push through it, you're creating actual deep learning, and this process won't be forever. So an example is like, when I do my hair, because I use product in my hair. I don't have any product. Well, I do, but not the product that I use when I go out. I hate the feeling. I hate the sticky feeling, but I have eczema of my scalp, so I have to use this like certain brand. And the more I go out and the more I do it, it takes me less and less time and less discomfort. So if I do it once or twice and then hate the feeling and just say, oh, I just won't do my hair. The problem is I never get past that initial stress and I don't get the reward. So then treatment feels like it's sucky. But if I make that commitment every time I go out, I'm going to use this product and do my hair, it becomes my norm. And then sure enough, it gets quicker, it gets easier. I wash less. And then pretty soon it's just kind of a norm. So kind of push through that initial turbulence.
Yeah. Yeah. And not doing compulsions will increase discomfort. And a lot of our success is how willing are we to feel that discomfort. So here I would say like it brings stress, but that's a sign you're doing it right. that's a sign that you're on the right track. If you're having discomfort and you're willingly having it, you are on the right track. So keep going.
I'm gonna answer this really quick just because this actual came up in my group last night. A lot of people in the group last night were saying like, "Hey, I was seeing like an associate because it's more affordable, or I've gone through like NoCD or Better Health or things like that." Or I was seeing somebody and they left the practice, and opening up about my OCD again and again is getting really exhausting, and people are kind of giving up treatment. So what I'd suggest for your son, Kimberly, is find it. Like, I ain't going anywhere, right? Like, I'm gonna be an OCD therapist until the day I die. I don't have like a plan B. So to ask that question, it is totally okay to ask and say, "Hey, I'm seeing you because my insurance covers it, or you're in the area. Are you planning, you don't know your life, but are you planning to be there for a while? Or is there some ideas that you might go off in your own practice, or you might travel or stop taking my insurance because this is really important to me?"
Yeah.
And that's not going to be foolproof, but there's therapists like, I've referred a lot of people to Kim, right? A lot of her therapists have been there for a long time. Like, it's okay to ask about that longevity, because you're right.
Mhm.
It's like going on a bunch of first dates. It's exhausting. So
Mhm.
just have that conversation. I told somebody who was seeing somebody at NoCD, is like, when you get the next therapist, just say, "I want to work with someone that's been with the company 2+ years and is planning on staying." And they were
Yeah.
able to connect him with somebody that was higher up in the company and was not leaving anytime soon. So definitely ask about that.
Agreed.
All right, Kim, I'm going to say the last announcements, and then you're going to give us the final thought to take us out. My quick announcements are, first and foremost, thank you so much, Kimberly, for being my co-host, third Wednesdays of the month. I always look forward to it. You're a rock star. I love you. I learned so much for you, so thank you. I always have a big apology to everybody in the attendees. We had so many more questions than we have time for. We could go a whole nother hour, but I do want to
Yeah.
say, everybody that is supporting each other in the chat, creating conversation, community, answering each other's questions and asking questions. We are so honored that you come each week, every Wednesday. So I appreciate you. I'm here every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern. Kim is here in the third Wednesday of the month. So come back next Wednesday at 12 Eastern. But those are all my announcements. Thank you, everyone. But Kim is going to give us the final hopeful word and take us out.
Oh, my loves, just be gentle. This is hard. We're all in here together. You're not alone, but please be kind to yourself. You deserve nothing but kindness. This is really hard stuff to be navigating. So, get yourself a coffee if that's what you love, or a tea, and just remind yourself that you're handling a lot and you're doing great.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. You guys are all sweet, saying nice comments in the chat. But take care. Everybody have a great rest of your day. And always remember, you can rewatch these on YouTube, on the IOCF's YouTube, as well. If you go to Facebook and go under Reels, you can watch these back. So send them to anybody that would like to see it. And if you came halfway through, you can watch the first half. Take care, and we'll be back next week. And thanks again, Kim. It was good seeing you.
You too. Bye.